let there be light. And I said, again. You remember the first time, don't you? You do remember. Yeah. And God said, let there be light, and there was. God said it. It happened. That pretty much settled it. And then God went on and said, it was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah. In our process of growing in our awareness of who and what we truly are, what we are spiritually, ourselves as children of God, as the image likeness of God, I was reminded of a boat ride I took when I was 9 years old. I just recently saw one of those nice black and white photographs, you know, when you had to take the film in to be developed. A picture of my father and I standing on the deck of this ship. We had taken the boat out of Miami, out of the harbor there in Miami, and it was an overnight trip to Havana. And of course, it was my first time out of the country, and it was very exciting. As we were approaching Havana, you could see it, the island off in the distance. And my mother shouted at me and started pointing over the side of the ship. And we saw these things coming up out of the water and going back down. And they were fish. Flying fish. Flying fish. They were fascinating. Of course, I never saw such a thing. Cincinnati is kind of landlocked, you know, it's on an Ohio River, but there are no flying fish in the Ohio River. It was pretty amazing to see them. And as I thought about those fish, you realize they weren't originally made that way. They weren't. They evolved to fly. Now, they evolved to fly because they had that innately in them. As we have the Christ innately in us. You can imagine the first fish. I'm not doing my fish face very well, but looking up at the surface of the water, and of course, seeing all this glittering light up there. I wonder what that is. Going up a little closer, maybe sticks his nose out and thinks, doesn't smell like water out there. Maybe looks carefully through that last little bit of water, or maybe just sticks his eyes above the surface, and he sees birds. Gee, if only I could do that. Took a while, and it took a lot of those wonderful fish looking up and saying, you can imagine, that fish went back and said, hey guys, have you ever been up? Have you ever really looked up there? Well, no. Come here, look. Look at those things. And pretty soon, that spark of life and intelligence within them started to do something miraculous. Their fins began to grow. And it took one of them to go up and leap out of the water and realize he could soar for quite a little distance over the surface, just like those birds he had seen. What would have happened if nobody ever looked to the light and said, wow, I can be part of that. I can connect to that. In his own way, that fish said, "Let there be light." And he was in the light and experiencing the light fully and freely. What did that mean? Can you imagine the freedom? Absolute freedom. We did the same thing. We weren't fish. We were humans. And we saw the birds, and you remember all the attempts to make wings and flap, and I've seen a few of those wonderful old black and white movies from way back with them going off a hill and till eventually somebody got the "let there be light" right. And Kitty Hawk. You know what happened at Kitty Hawk? The Wright brothers. Amazing how many times the wrong brothers never did get it right. We look up at the surface above where we are, and we see the light. And if we really get inspired and realize that it's possible for us, we begin to say in some way, "Let that light be in me." Or we keep looking down into the depths. It's amazing how we can look at life, and as the fish saw the light up above, we see something else. Instead of joy, we see sorrow. Instead of life, we see an alternative, something else. Instead of love, we see loneliness. Instead of saying, "Let there be light," we begin to connect ourselves with dark, lack, limit. Just imagine. You've planted seeds surely in your life, right? You stick that little sucker down in the dirt, you water it, make sure you cover it over and pat the dirt down, not too hard. And after a while, there is this intelligence within that seed. And it sticks forth just this little tendril underground. It knows where the light is. It's drawn and guided to the light that it can't yet see, but at that infinite level of intelligence within it, it knows it is there and it goes for it. Just imagine if it started going the other way. How long do you think it would take it to get to China? I once planted lilies of the valley at my house when I was very young. My grandmother lived in an apartment building, and in the back there was a bed of lilies of the valley that as a kid I loved to go back there and just sniff. I think I'd have rolled in them if they had let me. So when I had my house, I put some lilies of the valley in. And I watched them, and I don't know, I didn't do it just right, because on the side of the house where I put them, they didn't grow. Maybe, yeah, was facing east, too much sun. But one day I was on the other side of the house. Lilies of the valley, on the other side. I said to my aunt, I had a two-family house, and my aunt lived on the second floor. I said, Corinne, you're not going to believe it. They went down and under the house and they came up the other side. That seed that you plant, it knows which way the light is. Intelligence within it says, let there be light. Seeks that light. And notice that just like we, nothing in nature can go backwards. When it comes up into the light, can it go back down and back and be a seed again? Oh no, because the urge is to the light, upward, to become more, to become greater. That light is drawing us ever upward. It's an evolutionary urge. It's normal and natural throughout creation. And all life has this cosmic urge to become more. And for us, it may be more peaceful, to experience more love, more life, more health, more abundance, more sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. It's that urge within every part of life is equal, calling us, trying to lift us up. It's dependent upon our awareness of it and willingness to be moved by it, to respond to that call. Jesus answered that call. He looked to the light. In some way, he said about himself and about us, let there be light. And he became that enlightened spiritual being we call Christ. It wasn't something new. It was always there, as it's always in us. As Paul said, Christ in you, your hope of glory. It's there, but we have to become aware of it and be drawn up into that light. Allow it to come forth in us. When he did that, as he allowed that light to fill him and his mind and his whole being, he began to do things that seemed miraculous, absolutely miraculous. Well, imagine all those other fish at the surface looking up and seeing their friend. What the? Why, imagine what they must have thought. Magic. It's magic. Yeah. In our lives, how often, instead of saying, let there be light, and that light's good, or God, we say, well, let there be darkness, lack, challenges, bad luck. It's just bad luck, you know. I feel so helpless. I don't know what to do. All the while connecting to darkness, looking down instead of up into the light. The moment we realize that that light is not only there, but it is drawing us, calling us, that everything that the light is there for us. And that's love and life, health, wholeness, abundance, peace of mind, sense of meaning and purpose. It's all there, calling us to become more, to become more. To do that, we need to realize the light. You've heard me talk about realizing some truth, and that's when it becomes real to you. What you realize, you call forth in your life. Let there be light. Or let there be darkness. Now Jesus, he spoke a parable in the 13th chapter of Matthew. And I like this parable. You remember the expression alchemy? Turning lead into gold, the concept. It's a very simplistic way of speaking about alchemy in somewhat of a superstitious way. But alchemy was the idea of being able to transform something into something greater. And this parable, to me, is the story of divine alchemy. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. I'm sure you've done that too, right? In some way. Made bread. I used to make bread back before bread makers and put it on my radiators to rise. One Christmas I made, I think it was 12 loaves as Christmas presents. 100% whole wheat bread. And those were the days when we used lard. And it was good. Yeah, made good bread. Well, in this parable, you've got kingdom of heaven, a wonderful image. And that's the realm of all divine ideas. Ideas of life, love, substance, intelligence, peace, joy, prosperity. In order to experience these things, well, you need some leaven. What's leaven in our lives? A divine idea, such as, let there be light. Let there be light in my mind, my body, and affairs. In other words, let me connect to that light, that intelligence, that power of God. Okay, leaven in 3 portions of meal. The first portion of meal is in your conscious mind. You have that idea. Let there be light in your conscious mind. And you dwell on it for a while. It begins to expand within your consciousness. You begin to see more aspects of what it means to say, let there be light. You begin to see more of those wonderful elements of good that are contained in that light for you. And then it may seem as if, well, the divine idea disappears from conscious mind as it moves into the subconscious mind. The second measure of meal. That divine idea moves into the subconscious mind and it becomes a feeling. It becomes an emotion. All of a sudden, instead of just a mental image or mental concept, it becomes something living, because emotion moves, doesn't it? Not only do you have it in mind, but you begin to feel the reality. Begin to feel what it would be like to have that light, to be prosperous, to feel loved, and to feel content, and to feel needed and necessary to God, to the universe, to this world. Oh, but we still have a measure of meal to go. Reminds me of multi-meal, measure of meal. And that measure of meal is physicality. Because from conscious mind, subconscious mind, then it moves into the nervous system of your body. And that nervous system begins to respond. And the cells of your body are prepared to receive that light, to be one with that light, to accept and live as the fulfillment of that divine idea. That's alchemy. Because when it reaches all three levels, conscious, subconscious, and your physicality, you have erupted into light itself. The new good is now part of you. It's in your mind. It's in your heart. But it's in the very cells of your body. That's a pretty amazing thing. It takes a little bit of practice. Practice focusing on the good, the light. Seeing that presence of God as light in your life. No matter what's going on around you, no matter what's going on outside of you, you are still able to connect to the light. There's never a time when you are not able to say, "Let there be light." And the darker things seem to appear in your life. How more important could it be to begin to say, "Let there be light," instead of dwelling in the darkness? You know, there's an old joke about a woman who lived alone, and when the light bulb burned out and she had to sit in the dark, she said, "Well, I guess it's just my lot in life to sit in the dark." None of us have to do that. I know there are times where I just feel like I can't be bothered to go get a light bulb and screw it in. So I'll sit there in the dark for a while, but not forever. Eventually I realize it's in my hands to reconnect. First, the idea of light, of the presence of God, enters your conscious mind, and then it moves to your subconscious, where you begin to feel it, have emotion about it. You feel the joy that would bring into your life. And as it's moved to the mind, now it moves out into the very nerves of your body and the cells till you illuminate. You become that light. What a beautiful place to be. So you choose today. Where do you want to live? In the light? Or sit? The Christophers. Do you remember that TV show? It is better to light one little candle than to sit in the darkness? Yeah. And that little candle is inside. It's right there, waiting for us to say, "Let there be light." And how far does that light from the candle go? You realize in a darkened room, it spreads to fill every corner, wherever something isn't impeding the free flow of that light. God said, "Let there be light." So let's us do it again. in your mind, in your body, in your life. And there's that silent, invisible power that raised Jesus, that raised Lazarus, that raises us up through all the experiences in our lives. So I'd like you to, once again, look at that opening statement. I am as necessary to God as God is necessary to me. Together, I am as necessary to God as God is necessary to me. Now think of what that means. An individualized expression to God, of God, then you are important to God because you are one with an expression of God. It is important to itself. And without God, you don't exist. God is life, love, substance, and intelligence. Without God, there is no life, love, substance, or intelligence anywhere. I unify myself with the Father in mind. Together, I unify myself with the Father in mind. God is intelligence, one mind, and that is our point of connection. So in mind, you seek that light, you affirm that light. You open your consciousness to behold that light. I experience the same resurrecting power that raised up Jesus Christ. Together, I experience the same resurrecting power that raised up Jesus Christ. It wasn't unique to Jesus. That same resurrecting power raised the little girl. It raised up Lazarus. All because someone had the consciousness of it. Jesus. And let it be in your consciousness. And you are raised up into the light. For that little fish. I can't. Used to make a great fish face, not anymore. For that fish, when it beheld the light, and it wanted the light, and sought the light, it was called, it was raised up. That same resurrecting power that raised Jesus Christ lifted that fish, raised that fish in mind, in body, to a new level of awareness. It actually changed, as a process of evolution, changed the physical body of the fish. And that same power, that same silent, invisible power of resurrection is right here in you, ready to do its perfect work. But you gotta go up, look to the light, and know, let there be light. First in my mind, then my heart, and then my body, and then my life.